Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Forum Stage session. I'm Valentina, your host, and also one of the CMX Connect hosts in Madrid. My partner in community crime is also here today, emceeing on another stage. You've probably seen her, Seppi. So the Madrid team is in full force. Our next speaker has 13 years of experience in marketing, community and events at leading high-growth software companies, including Atlassian and GitHub. She's also founded a non-profit concert series, Blues for Pops, and has grown a community for people affected by cancer. Connect with Britt on things you can organize, delves in as a lost art form, curb your enthusiasm, and personifying inanimate objects. Please give a big CMX Summit welcome to Britt Caldwell.
Hi, thank you. Cool, can everyone see my screen? Valentina, can you see my slides?
Yes, I can.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I'm here today to talk about how to use product marketing methodologies to drive growth in your communities. Something I've learned over the years is that the health of your company is truly mirrored in your community. It's sort of like the old adage, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. We can desperately try to be different from our parents, but it's only when we look at ourselves truthfully that we can forge a path towards growth. And today I'm going to talk about how we can grow and engage our communities in a way that reflects the health of our organizations and our teams. Many of you are experts in community, marketing, support, content, all over, and I'm super humbled to even have a moment of your time today to share my experience and approach. And at the risk of sounding trite, I'd also just like to say that we've been doing it all wrong. I can't tell you how many times I've been at companies where they say they're so excited to build community, they believe in it so much, and only later to be relegated as a subsect of another small team with limited access to budget, headcount, and internal resources. Community has been somewhat of a buzzword for a while, and some companies don't know where to put it or what to do with it. And I often at times feel like that they believe community managers were put on earth to magically build trust and transparency with their customers as a one-woman act without a company credit card. But our traditional methods of community management have kind of perpetuated this in my mind, being siloed internally. Historically, we've had the short end of the stick when it comes to access to analytics. For our personal customer bases and programs. I have hope with this, with Bevy and the rise of community software this year. But all of this has really perpetuated the limitations to our access to internal resources. I'm sure many of you have been in meetings when the company says the biggest driver of growth this quarter was from organic. And while we're unable to appropriately attribute that category, the credit goes to another team. And we all know that the true magic to what we do has nothing to do with metrics or budget. Our focus on empathy and understanding and engagement is exactly what has gotten us here today. But in order for us to get the resources that we truly need to do our jobs, be recognized internally as key growth drivers and equal players to other marketing functions, I believe we should take a page from the product marketing playbook. So this is a good segue into getting to know me a bit, because if you know about how I grew up in Silicon Valley, then this talk will make much more sense. By the way, this is me with the Webflow Sarasota user group, so how to get my community in there. But I've always chosen high growth, product driven, and community loving companies for a reason. Growing up in a product first, sales second, or in the case of Atlassian, no sales at all, made it really easy to understand the value of community early on. And it also allowed me to see the benefits of treating community as a product. And just because I wholeheartedly believe we are more than our resumes, a little bit about me. I'm a Bay Area native who moved to sunny Santa Monica 2 years ago. Sandwiches and delis are my religion, and I love meeting new people, so please connect with me, whether it's about this talk or whether it's just to be friends. Okay, so back to business. Why take a page from the PMM playbook? I might be biased by my time at Atlassian, and I also might be married to a product marketer, but the truth is community beautifully aligns with the PMM marketing function. It's all about educating and empowering customers, using strategy to drive your vision with creative use of personas. And my favorite part is how integral the research is to the process, which I really think we can learn from. So instead of racking our brains to come up with the newest, coolest, most unique idea for a program or a campaign, we can really create our own go-to-market plan by rethinking our community as a product offering. And if you think about it, product teams typically get the most budget, so why not? But a typical go-to-market strategy starts with audits and research and data. And once that's all synthesized, a strategy and a roadmap is kind of just born or appears. And it sounds like a lot, and it is, but I've found that the answers quite literally pop out at me if I start with what I already know. So I'll walk you through my team's process at Webflow for building a go-to-market strategy and roadmap for our campaigns. There's 6 main steps, and it's a bit of a lengthy process, but it's super easy, and you can and should steal templates right from your product marketing team. Google has access to tons, and I can turn this into a template. If anyone's interested, just email me after. But I usually do this every December when there's downtime to prepare for the next year, and I definitely recommend it anytime you're starting a new job. So my screenshots are from early 2020. But the first step is to conduct a deep audit of your entire community, every community, your forums, your meetups, your Slack, anything any platform. Start broad and then get specific later. But do not leave any stone unturned. And at this stage, you're just listing stuff. So make sure to include it all. Any marketing channel that you're utilizing, and then also remember to list out just all of your available marketing channels. Doing this led my team to the realization that we needed to prioritize building community-specific channels because we weren't able to reach everyone in the community easily. When I started Webflow, we were a small team, and being able to reach our massive community was one of our challenges that we uncovered here. And also just listing out what kind of support you're receiving internally. Later, that helps you uncover what's preventing other teams from offering support if that's an issue for you. And then next is to start pulling data for that list that you've made. So the true beauty of this is just seeing everything all in one place. It's going to be a monster of a Google Doc, but it's really actually shocking to see what insights jump out at you from just putting everything that you already know all together. So at Webflow, our team focused on demographics, total reach, popular content across online and offline communities, our growth rates. We have an excellent growth marketing team at Webflow, and we really wanted to be aligned with their metrics. So whatever metrics your team is focused on, whether it's customer acquisition costs, NPS, try finding that in your own community. This will make more sense to the company. It'll make you more aligned. And then what we do is take all of our community data and map it to our customer data. And and make charts on how many community members are customers and all of that. It's very typical to be in the situation where you don't have access to data points. Again, I think this is like one of the positives coming out of 2020. And obviously Bevvy's really helpful for that. But Typeform can be your best friend, and I highly recommend segmenting your surveys. And surveys, even if you do have your data points, are also critical because anecdotal feedback, interviews that you do, anything attaching a story to your data will be a key part in fostering empathy between your organization and your community. So there's more on that later, but for example, just sending a survey of how did you hear about us will tell you which marketing channels are the most active, which ones should you invest in. So if most people are on Twitter and you haven't had a social media presence, like this will tell you to get on Twitter. Asking where they are in the customer journey is a great way to create internal pipelines and get other teams at the company access to your community so that they can be part of it with you. And one of the key pillars of this go-to-market strategy is really being able to decipher what the biggest challenges are for your community and for your team. Don't forget about yourself. Document it all. Are there different challenges for each platform? Are active members having the same challenges as leaders? Chances are they're going to be different, but also just trying to figure out like what's getting in the way of your team being productive, what's preventing internal teams from offering their support to you. So when I joined Webflow, we had the awesome misfortune of having super high organic growth on meetup.com, but at this step in the go-to-market exercise, it became crystal clear that we were not going to be able to support that growth long-term if we didn't have access to analytics. So making a note to include migrating to a new platform like Bevy into the roadmap. I swear Bevy doesn't pay me. So you're done with the most painful part, the audit. Now comes the fun part, personifying your community. This is actually my favorite step. It may sound counterintuitive because the whole magic of community and why I believe it's the best kind of marketing and most authentic is that it's our job as community managers to recognize that our customers are people. We don't work with users, we work with humans. But PMMs have the secret sauce, and we need to be better about marketing our customers internally. So at this stage, we gather all of the data, all of the interviews that we've done with our community members, our leaders, all that anecdotal feedback from the surveys, and start to look for similarities. So categorization and tagging is under sub-theme here. It's my best friend. I love being organized, and it just helps me, helps themes kind of pop out at me better. But you want to do this per member tier and not necessarily per platform if you want to avoid further siloing your community members' experience. And you want to also look for things, not just similarities so that you're generalizing people, but look for cool things and differentiating factors that stand out. For example, our PMM team made this awesome customer intel site in Webflow that anyone at the company can access at any time. So they documented interviews, call recordings, and they made profiles for our customers, talked about motivations for purchasing. We need to be stealing this. This is genius. And we made little cards for our community members. The great thing about community is we don't have to force information out of people. They're already here with us because they want to share. They want to help your company succeed. They want to help you succeed. And they're here to make connections. So this part should be easier for us than product marketers. But we can really take a page from this. And by doing this exercise, For example, we noticed that we didn't have many community leaders that worked at enterprise companies, but we also noticed that our largest and most active communities were led by designers at enterprise companies. This was a very key ingredient prior to the pandemic because those leaders had access to free office space, additional sponsorship, marketing resources. And this was an important discovery for a small team because we later discovered in this process that strategically growing the community through active leadership was something that we really wanted to do. So our efforts became more targeted. When we knew we could get the same growth results if we recruited fewer leaders who had access to more resources than just a ton of leaders, it was kind of a revelation because we had little budget and very little bandwidth. So adding a ton of leaders from the get-go would have caused a lot more stress on the team. Okay, so we are done with the introspective phase, looking within, and now it's time to see what the market and our competitors are up to. So you can come up with categories first, and obviously, if you're not living under a rock, you know what's kind of popular, who your competitors and all that. But I actually prefer to let the data and the research do work for me. So I start just by making a list of companies and communities that I want to research, and then spending 30 minutes or so taking notes on what I can find about their community. Remember, our product is community. I find it easier this way because once I have my notes, I again look for similarities and categories start to jump out at me. So these were the themes that appeared at the start of 2020 for communities akin to Webflow, and this tells me so much. This is messaging from other communities that I can cross-reference with Webflow trends to see if we have any competitive advantage. All those, the content themes they pulled, the most popular meetups, what were they talking about those meetups? Do any of those relate to what the rest of the world is talking about, what our competitors are talking about? Then you can find maybe we should try to partner with this other company to grow that particular one. Maybe they're doing it better than us and we can just go check it out. I also like to peruse upcoming conference themes to note trends for later in the year. So not just what's happening now, but that's just a really easy way to see what people are going to be talking about throughout the whole year. At this point, we're on page 10 of a 20-page Google Doc, but stay with me. After you've collected your notes and your data, you've grouped it, this is going to be plain as day. It's going to be so much easier than if you just sit down one day with a blank page and try to figure out what your opportunity is to win the space or grow your community. I also use this step as an opportunity to create a SWOT analysis for the community. So that kind of sets us up nicely for the next step. But this might look like gibberish and it's a lot, but the key takeaways, just once you're reading your own work and in the weeds of it, they sort of start to pop out with you, and just synthesizing it can be really helpful. And it's also a really thoughtful process that I think the people in your department and your company will start to understand, because this is the way that they think. The most important step of all, aligning with top-line metrics. What does all this really mean unless you're working to get to your company's end goals? So knowing which customers are in your community and how that can help increase customer retention. If your department is focused on new signups one quarter, you can bake that into your programs. How can your leaders be working to get new eyes into the community? How can you lower the barrier of entry to forums or your user groups? Scheduling your biggest campaigns or your biggest project ideas around product releases will be able to support the rest of the company, and their messages will be amplified, but also you'll be able to bring in the community to roadmap decisions. And sharing OKRs is huge, so that everybody has a vested interest in collaborating. Integrating stakeholders is key to your success, just period on that one. The final frontier, just creating wrapping it all up, creating your strategy and your roadmap. Consider your bandwidth, consider your budget. Priority is huge. So now that you know what the biggest challenges that your community faces, and you know the biggest opportunities, putting that together in a timeline should be super easy. You can phase out your campaigns and projects strategically by knowing what problems you need to solve first and what resources you have on hand. And by the end of the year, what resources do you need to request from the company in order to fulfill the growth that you're going to see. And I think that's sort of the best news of this whole thing is you're going to be the most organized team at your company. All your OKRs are going to be planned out a year ahead. Anytime someone asks you, like, I need, headcount, budget requests, like, you're going to have all these numbers on hand, and it'll be so much easier to iterate if something changes because you have your North Star, you know why you're doing what you're doing. The initiatives that you put into each quarter, those can change, but you'll be so much, it'll be so much easier to come up with new ideas when you know what is important for the year. And finally, just sharing it with your company and your community. So fostering trust and empathy on both sides of the table. We like to share our roadmap with the community in our monthly newsletter so they know what the team that is behind them is working on, and we give them opportunities to provide feedback. So when they know what's coming up, then they don't have to guess and they don't have to say like, oh man, my idea that they're never listening to me. They can see because we're transparent about it and thoughtful about it. And so there's just much more empathy on both sides of the table. And how has this shaken out for us? It's been a wild year. Explosive growth. We have seen 182% growth in our community in the past 15 months, and just explosive growth when it comes to active leadership, online and offline. Not so much offline these days. A really great baseline quarter over quarter growth and high satisfaction across all of our channels. And so I'm going to leave you with the same quote from the beginning, but this is just so important to me because if you're a mess internally, your community is just going to be a mess too. It's unavoidable. And what we do behind the curtain is so incredibly important, and it'll be reflected in the health of our community, but it's also just so important for our peers and the world to see all of the great work that we do and how thoughtful we are. So don't forget to be an internal marketer for yourself, and not just for the community that supports and loves you. Thank you so much. It's been an honor, and I love the Bevy team so much. So this has been really fun. Thanks for having me.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, you can hear me, but you can't see me. There I am. All right. Thank you so much, Britt. Here is your deserving clap for all of that amazing information you just shared.
It's been fun. Thank you so much.
Get in touch with you. How can they?
Yeah, so sorry, I didn't leave the contact screen up very long, but I'm just Britt with 2 T's at Webflow. I'm not the best with social media, but LinkedIn is probably a great place, and email me, reach out. I'd love to meet everyone. I can't see the chat if there is one, so I apologize for that, but yeah, just feel free to reach out on email or LinkedIn.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much. That is all we've got time for right now. Very shortly with our next speaker. Thank you again, Britt. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks.